Good day. Welcome to another Answers Weekly Wraps. I'm Viv Govender, and as usual, what we'll do is we'll go over some of the stories of the week that affect you in your investments, as well as a little AI/tech segment at the end. Before I start, I would like to invite you who are watching this to a couple of seminars, a couple of webinars actually. Ransford is holding. There is a webinar on what to expect in 2024. We've held this every year for the last few years, and it basically gives you our ideas for the year, talking about things like economic growth, levels for indices, commodity prices, currencies, etc. There's only a couple of black swan events that this current world environment are quite important. That'll be on the 23rd of January, Tuesday. And then we also have another webinar the following day, where we'll go into a couple of small cap stocks done by Anthony Clark, our small cap analyst. So yeah, if you want to attend these webinars, you can just go on our website, ranswoods.com, and book a place there. And also, I'm sure they'll be on YouTube, quite soon thereafter. Okay, let's start off with the wrap up for this week. There's three big stories I want to talk about. Firstly is the China came in with a declining population for the second year in a row. Then we saw UK inflation a little higher than expected. And then finally we had, or have a developing story as I speak to you. Iran has attacked Pakistan, possibly in connection with that bomb blast that occurred a few weeks ago that killed over 100 people in Iran. And the Pakistanis apparently have responded in kind. Okay, and that's actually going to be our big story of the weekend. We'll go into more depth. And in the AI/tech segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we saw at the CES, the Consumer Electronic Show. There's been an interesting, AI development there that I want to talk to you guys about. Okay, let's start off with China. China's population fell again by just under 3 million people. They had about 9.5 million births, or 9 million births, sorry, this year, but 9.5 million last year. Sounds like a lot of births, but I mean, China is a country of about 1.4, 1.5 billion people. 9 million people, 10 million people is not even 1% of that population. You know what I mean? And you need to have more than that, to keep that population stable. China's birth rate has been well below replacement for quite some time. This is a thing I've talked to you guys for a number of times. And unless they do something significant about reversing this, it's going to be a real impediment to their economic growth, even their stability possibly over the next few decades. The economic growth rate for China for 2023 came in at just over 5%. This is kind of in line with expectations, and this year is what we expect around about this, a 4.5 to 5% growth rate in China. Now, it remains to be seen just how real these numbers are. There are, significant concerns about China's, the validity of China's economic numbers. There's been belief that, when they were growing at like 13% in the 2000s, they were saying, 8 or 9% because they didn't want to be showing to grow too fast. And now that they're growing at, maybe below target, they are showing numbers that are more in line with target, just because they don't want to show weakness. I think 2024 has been an important year for China. They need to basically do something about, firstly, ongoing tensions that they are experiencing with the West, especially with the US. They need to have some kind of, resolution to a lot of the issues they have with Taiwan coming through. The Taiwanese just recently voted in power an pro-independence party, an anti-China, if you could phrase it, that party. And that obviously ratcheted up tensions with the mainland. There needs to be some kind of resolution to this, because this can't continue going on where China kind of saber rattles all the time around Taiwan, and kind of has a kind of Taiwan is part of China policy, one China policy effectively, because it's getting to a point right now, especially with what's happening to Ukraine, that's having repercussions that are quite negative, I think, going forward. The next story is UK inflation. We saw UK inflation come in at about 4%. That's a bit higher than expected. It reverses some of the recent declines we've seen coming through, and could indicate that inflation is stickier than we had hoped. Now, we've seen some economic numbers from the US recently that have been a bit more positive in terms of economic growth, etc., in terms of employment, in terms of wage growth as well. We've seen, inflation, though it's come down dramatically, still significantly above the 2% target for the US Fed. And this comes in light of the US Fed looking at actually cutting rates 3 times this year. That's what their expectations are. Goldman Sachs thinks there might be as many as 5 cuts in 2024. Now, if we are seeing inflation at above 2%, 3+% even in the US, so we are seeing inflation at about say 4+% or 4% or so in the UK. Following an inflation cutting policy in this kind of environment would probably go against the principles that the reserve banks have put forward about inflation targeting. Inflation targeting means you set a target for your inflation and you basically get there hell or high water. High unemployment does not matter, you're going to get to the lower inflation rate. And that kind of gives the market confidence to basically believe the inflation rate, and that kind of, in effect, the prophecy kind of fulfills itself. If you believe that inflation is going to be like 2%, you kind of do the things that make inflation like trend towards 2%. If, however, you start believing that there'll be a bit of flexibility at 3% or so, you won't do those things that bring inflation lower, and you might even do things that make inflation go towards a 3 or maybe higher target. And I think so far the US Fed has shown itself to be rather conservative, rather strong, rather hawkish when it comes to inflation. But any kind of weakness does damage the reputation. And so if we do start seeing the Fed, cutting interest rates when inflation is not, really strongly trending towards 2% and possibly even rising slightly, I think that'll really be damaging towards the long-term credibility of the US Fed. And now into our deep dive of the week, which is going to be the Iran situation. Now, a little background. I'm sure everyone knows about what happened on the 7th of October last year, where Hamas attacked Israel and killed about 1,000, maybe a little over 1,000 people, took some hostages, etc., and the subsequent Gaza-Israeli offensive, which has killed maybe 24,000 people in Gaza. In fact, at the moment, South Africa has a case in the International Criminal Court against Israel for genocide, and it remains to be seen just what happens there. Well, Hamas, Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon, and the Houthis, which are in Yemen, are anti-American, anti-Israeli kind of forces in the region, and they are being supported by the Iranians. The Iranians are kind of the anti-American country in the Middle East at the moment, the most significant one anyway. The US is on the side of countries like Saudi Arabia, on the side of countries like Egypt, Jordan, etc. These are Arab countries. For those that don't know, Iran is not an Arab country. It's a Persian country. There's a big difference there. And also, there's a Shia-Sunni divide here as well, a religious divide, between, even though they're all Muslim countries, there's a kind of a religious schism between the countries. Anyway, what's happened is that Iran has gotten more and more pressure over the last little while for its perceived support and actual support, quite frankly, of Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and so on, who have over the last little while, attacked, U.S. interests and Israeli interests. The Houthis have, attacked U.S. ships. They have kind of like made it quite difficult to go through the Red Sea. There's a bit of a bottleneck there, which kind of affects travel through the Suez Canal. They have done a number of things that, in fact, at the moment, many shipping companies have advised you not to go through that particular region and rather divert around Cape Town effectively, which adds, thousands of kilometers to travel, 40-50% in some cases from Asia to Europe. Now, Iran, being seen as being the sponsor of this, has gotten a lot of flack. And what's happened is that so far, the Israelis and the Americans have likely not attacked Iran. But there was a bomb explosion at the kind of memorial service for an important figure in Iran. Commander was very well known for acting outside Iran to foment insurrection, etc., in a number of different places in the Middle East. He was killed, and this was kind of a death anniversary for him. And what happened was there was a bomb explosion, maybe a couple of bomb explosions, killed over 100 people. At the commemoration of his death anniversary. Now, it does appear that the people responsible for this were not the US or the Americans and the Israelis, but rather terrorist groups, possibly based in Pakistan. And what's happened is we have seen an Iranian attack on Pakistan. Now, Pakistan as a country is a total mess. Their economy has collapsed. They have borrowed way too much money. They will probably never be able to repay it. Their alliances with places like China are in disarray because of the inability to fulfill promises on their part. Their former Prime Minister Imran Khan, the cricketer, is in legal trouble. The army is stepping in to basically appoint another prime minister. There's going to be an election, but he's effectively going to be appointed by the army. That's how Pakistan works. The army is far more powerful than any other institution in that country. But, and this is the big but, Pakistan has nukes. You can be as dysfunctional as you want to. Not Korea is dysfunctional. Pakistan is dysfunctional. But if you have nukes, you are a serious player in anything. And the Iranians, by attacking Pakistan, have attacked a nuclear-armed nation. Okay. Now the Pakistanis have responded, apparently attacking across the border to, people to groups in Iran that apparently are involved in the separatist, insurgency. Let me say in Balochistan. Pakistan, for those that don't know, was created after the independence of the subcontinent, where there was a partition. There used to be all one part of a single entity controlled by the British. After the British left, the entity divided in two parts: India and Pakistan. Pakistan was created by the parts that were majority Muslim. Both, quite frankly, in the East and West. That's what Bangladesh used to be called, East Pakistan. Now, what's happened here is that Pakistan has several groups that were kind of pushed together to make a country. Some of these groups are happy about it. Some of these groups are not happy about it. One of the group that are happy about it has been from a place called Balochistan, have been kind of having an insurgency, including numerous terrorist events against the Pakistanis. And apparently they've been supported by the Iranians and possibly by the Indians as well. Now, what's happened here is that the Iranian support, apparently there's some groups that are based in Iran, which shares a border with Pakistan, and that kind of has kind of filtered over as well into terms of having a base outside the country and attacking inside the country. It's very difficult to handle unless you attack outside the country. And so what the Pakistanis have done is they've kind of gone after targets in Iran that may be involved in this particular terrorist insurgency. The Indians have come out and they've supported Iran and said basically we are totally in favor of fighting anybody that's basically fighting terrorists. And in this case, the Iranians are fighting terrorists, even though one might argue in the Israeli situation they are the terrorists. Okay, and the danger here is multifold. If this kind of flares up, like I said, Pakistan has nukes. We haven't seen a nuke used in anger since 1945. The first time it happens, it's going to change the world. It's going to make a very different world. There's almost a taboo about using nuclear weapons right now. But if we don't, if we don't basically maintain that taboo, it's not like there's the taboo for not littering. But you see somebody else littering, the chance of you littering goes up. There's a taboo about not using nukes. But if Pakistan doesn't use nukes, there's a bigger chance that the Russians use nukes in Ukraine. Okay, you see what happens there. A chance that the Israelis use nukes in Lebanon or in Syria or in Yemen. That becomes a very scary world situation. And beyond just this, also extreme version, there's also the fact that the Iranians control a piece of water called the Straits of Hormuz, which I've talked about before. If there is, a disruption between Pakistan and Iran, do they block that off? If they do block that off, guess what? Around about a third of the world's energy reserves moves through that particular thing to places like China and India and so on. That is a very, very different kind of situation. If that is blocked off, there won't be an ability to basically, replace that route very easily, very quickly. Especially if you consider the fact that the other part that you might want to go around the Red Sea is being currently attacked by the Houthis, who are, like I said, sponsored by the Iranians. So it could effectively take a lot of Middle East energy production out of the market. So in terms of those kind of factors, I do think that this has very large, long-term possible impacts on the globe. What will happen going forward? Well, look, Pakistan has been involved in incursions, especially in places like India, over the last couple of decades. Some really, really major events that India as well has nukes. The big one was, of course, the Mumbai hotel attacks. But they've also, had a more recent one back in 2019, where they attacked an army convoy. In both those cases, in the first one, India did nothing. In the second one, there was a very limited strike against Pakistan, and possibly didn't even kill anybody in the limited strike against Pakistan. And then things kind of calmed down thereafter. But it must be known that India is far more amenable to international pressure than Iran is. it's quite possible that the Iranians won't be as keen to basically bow to international pressure. And there is also a slight possibility that they are looking for conflict. Why? If you recall, over the last little while, there's been a huge upsurge, especially in gender-based protests in Iran, based on women wearing the head coverings and so on. To go uncovered, with your head uncovered in Iran is like a crime. And several women have been killed, and there's been thousands of people arrested and tortured, possibly, and quite a number of people have actually been killed in judicial custody by the regime. And it could be possible that if they might view an armed conflict with Pakistan or maybe even Israel or whatever as a way to maintain power, because that would actually give them an excuse to tamp down on local issues. So yeah, this is a very dangerous part of the world at the moment. Okay, moving on to our AI segment. There was, like I said, the Consumer Electronics Show recently, and there's a particular device I want to mention. It's called the Rabbit R1. Now, this is both a very smart and very dumb device. Dumb in that it's a device. Smart in that the software behind it is very, very interesting, very, very clever. What it does effectively is it acts as almost a digital assistant that kind of manages all your apps for you. And that doesn't sound like, very like powerful, but imagine this. Imagine you want to buy something from Amazon and you just ask this thing, hey, I want to buy something. Please find me the best price. You have, say, maybe 2 or 3, shopping things, Amazon, Shopify, wherever it may be, eBay, as things here. This device or this app, or LLM rather, goes through and looks at the price of things that are similar or exactly what you want at Amazon, at Shopify, at eBay, at Alibaba, whoever, and says, hey, this is the cheapest price of things. This could destroy Amazon's, right now, why Amazon is so valuable is because you want to buy something, you just go to Amazon and you search for it. But if there's something that goes above Amazon as a search, well, that's a different story. You might be willing to install a Whoosh app or a Alibaba app, a Spotify kind of thing. But when you're really looking for something, you might just be too lazy to go look at them all. But if you had this assistant, it could do that for you. Also, if you imagine, the example I'd use is Google. Google controls the flow of information between you and the internet effectively. You see, you go to the normal stuff that you look at, but you want to find something new, you go through Google. That has made Google a multi-trillion-dollar company, over $1 trillion in valuation. How much more powerful is not controlling the flow of information, but to control the actual flow of information plus control your actual spending. And that's what this particular device can do at the moment. This particular piece of software can do at the moment. It can control not just your searching for, things like, for instance, the example they gave there was how old was Brad Pitt, but it could also control your spending on a pizza. Another example they used. Like I said, it can control your spending to buy any piece of equipment, and not just any piece of equipment. It would give you generic alternatives to those pieces or other brands that are similar to that. It could give you, as an AI, product. It could survey the reviews on this particular thing, and you could say, I really care about this particular aspect, this particular characteristic, and you could find out what people think about that particular characteristics beyond just looking at the number of stars they gave in that review. Now imagine the power of that device. I would suspect that a company that has a monopoly on that power is worth not just as much as Google, but multiple times as much as Google. That's the smart part of it. The dumb part of it is that the company is deciding to sell this to you as a as a device, not an app. A $200 app, as a device, sorry. A little device, another thing with a screen, needs to be powered up, needs to be in your pocket if you carry it around. If there was no smartphones, this is a killer app. But there are smartphones. How many of you guys are willing to carry another device it's slightly smaller in terms of like surface area than a say a phone, like a iPhone or something, but significantly thicker, multiples thicker than an iPhone? It definitely is not going to be as a no cost carry in your pocket. It's going to be as big as your wallet, maybe even bigger than that in terms of the feel in your pocket. It's going to cost you $200, requiring the actual creation of actual devices and shipped and returned if there's a fault, and guarantees and all the other things that come along with it. If they just took this thing and put it as an app in the store, their profit margin on the device can't be more than say $50 to $100, and just charge that straightforward. Forget about the device cost. Charge $50 for this app in the store. Hell, even put a subscription on it. By the way, this thing is just a once-off purchase of $200. There's no subscription to it. You can even make it, for instance, for free on the App Store. I know for one, I'd be using it. I saw this device and I thought it was amazing. I saw the app was amazing. The actual software behind it was amazing. This could be a multi-billion-dollar company if it was an app. And hopefully somebody's going to telling these guys this, but it's incredible. So go look at the Rabbit R1 from CES and see what you think. But I think what's interesting is beyond this, their capabilities, is that this is the first consumer kind of like thing I've seen using AI from a smaller company, from not one of the multi-$100 billion companies like the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Googles of the world, the Alphabets. This is a smaller company, a startup company with what I would think is a very impressive AI application for the public. Okay, that's it for the week. I look forward to speaking to you guys again next week. And remember, the webinars on Tuesday and Wednesday. Go to ranswers.com and join in. Thanks.